New 72 Radio, the voice, views, and visions of the collective.
Hello everyone, my name is Mary Berger and welcome to episode number 9 of Waking the Spirit. Today is Thursday, February 18th, 2016, and we are recording this show actually on Tuesday the 16th, and it will be posted on Thursday the 18th, so we won't have any live call-ins this week. So for those of you who don't know or you're new to the show, this show is for those of you out there just starting to explore your spirituality, which includes me. It includes a lot of people. I haven't been on my path too long. So I'm hoping this show will be a resource of information where you can turn to get information about how to explore your spiritual path. It's as simple as that. So this week on the show, I'm really excited. My guest this week is Cinda Stevens Lonsway, and she is a spiritual coach and spiritual author, writer, speaker, amongst a lot of other things. And we are talking about the Hay House conference that we went to over the past weekend. So Cinda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mary. I'm glad to be back.
Yay, yay. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think I'm kind of a groupie.
This is your second time on the show, and you actually called in on the last show.
Mm-hmm.
So Cinda was on my 4th show, which was back in October, and we were actually talking about the book she is writing, and it's called I Know Now. And it's all about a true life experience she had and how she actually healed herself after the fact. And it goes through the whole story. And it's a fascinating book. And she is now in the process of editing the book. The book is finished and she's editing. And I have the honor of being one of her beta readers, which has been a lot of fun. So hopefully that book will be finished soon and published so you all can read it. It's fascinating. So you all will love it. So Cindy and I went to the Hay House I Can Do It conference this past weekend in Seattle. And for those of you who don't know who or what Hay House is, it's a publishing company that was founded back in the mid-'80s. I think it was 1984, by a woman called Louise Hay, hence the name Hay House. And it is a publishing company that publishes all sorts of books, videos, audios, meditations, all on spirituality and self-help. So they have what they call their I Can Do It conference, and they have 4 every year. And this was the first one for this year. Other conferences this year, they're going to have a conference in Toronto, Canada, May 21st through the 22nd. And I'm just looking up at my screen here, that's why my eyes went up. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, September 16th through the 18th. And then in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, October 15th and 16th. So if anybody is interested in attending one of these conferences, that's when and where they're being held. So, Cinda, wasn't it a fun weekend?
Yes, it was a blast. I'm still tired. I still look tired.
Yeah, I haven't recovered yet either. I've been dragging for 2 days. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Cinda and I went to this conference, and I'll just kind of give you the lay of the land on the conference. It was at the Seattle Convention Center, and it was, what do you think, Cinda? There were a couple of thousand people there?
Yeah, about 2,000. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it started actually on Friday during the day. If you purchased the Friday ticket, you could attend a day-long seminar, and I think they had 4 of them, if I'm not mistaken. we didn't purchase that. We didn't start our attending the conference until Friday night. So Friday night they had a keynote speaker, and then they did a beautiful video tribute to Wayne Dyer, which was an hour and a half long. And it basically took a lot of Wayne's video presentations and kind of, took clips of each one, and it was really beautiful. Really.
Yeah, I think, Mary, that actually they were all cut-ups from his PBS specials that he's done.
Oh, okay, you're right.
So I think they sort of did a collage of all of his PBS specials under certain categories that he's known for, and then that will be featured on as another PBS special.
Right. And I think that one comes out sometime in the spring. Yeah. So prior to Wayne Dyer, they had the keynote speaker. His name was Robert Holden, and he is British. He was a lovely gentleman, and he is a Hay Health author, and wrote a book with Louise Hay called Life Loves You. And he was just very energetic, and talked about the process he went through in writing this book with Louise Hay, and talked a little bit about his kids and his family. He's also the author of the books Shift Happens and Holy Shift, if anybody's heard of those. So he was just very energetic, very inspirational. I really enjoyed his speech.
Yeah, he was hysterical. He came out with the music blaring and dancing and made all of us get up and dance. And yeah, the book he wrote with Louise Hay is called Life Loves You, and that's her main way that she addresses everyone and signs off her emails, and it's her cornerstone go-to statement that she's known for within her company and those that she works with. And he being a psychologist or something like that, psychotherapist of some kind, he wanted to write this book with her. Yeah, it was quite lovely. I'm listening to the book on audio. I've listened to it a couple times now. I love it. It's read by him, and he's a fantastic storyteller.
Do you have any favorite part of that book you want to share?
Well, the preface of the book, or the introduction, is kind of long, but it gives you an idea, and he talked about it on stage at the I Can Do It conference, about how he came about making it happen. And the first time he met Louise, and he was at an I Can Do It conference, she wanted to do his makeup. Remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And he's like, okay. So moments before he went out on stage, he's like, you don't say no to Louise Hay. So he sat down and she did his makeup, and the clock was ticking down, and he finally goes out on stage, and right on time. And but that started this beautiful relationship, because right before he left her, she looked him in the eyes and said, Robert, life loves you. And it hit him in the gut and hit him in the heart. And he was altered in that moment. And then he sat with that forever. And then one day, when he was supposed to be writing something of his other books, he realized that he just couldn't leave her statement alone. And within a few hours had composed an entire book outline of a book he felt that Louise Hay and he should write together. And when she sent the idea to her, it happened to be on her birthday, and she went berserk, loving it. And then they spent days together writing the book.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine, as a writer, I just can't imagine the moment of sitting with a mentor in a room writing a book together. That sounds like pure bliss.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot to talk about. So I thought maybe I'd go into the following day. So that was Friday night. And so the next day we had two keynote speakers in the morning. I think they were an hour each. And the first one was Anita Moorjani. And for those of you who don't know what Anita, or who Anita Moorjani is, She is a woman who had a near-death experience, I guess you would call it. She suffered from stage 4 cancer for 4 years. And she was living in Hong Kong at the time and was in the hospital. And the doctors had told her family that this was it, that she probably wouldn't survive the night. And she actually was aware the whole time of what the doctors were saying, and she heard everything, and she even heard what the doctors were saying outside of the room. That the doctors were going over her chart and talking to her family members. I believe her husband and her mom were there, and so she heard it all. And then she actually was visited by her father, who had died 10 years earlier. And he basically said to her, Anita, you have a choice to make. You can either stay on this side or you can go back. And he said, you have a lot left to do, and you might want to think about going back. And, you know, of course, what Anita said, she said, you know, on the other side, it was just so fabulous and so wonderful. And I think it's kind of hard to describe, but she said that it was basically the most amazing feeling of love she had ever felt in her life. It was just flooded her and overwhelmed her. And her thought when her dad told her that she needed to go back was, I don't want to go back. Who wants to leave this wonderful, wonderful place and this wonderful feeling? And but she ultimately decided to go back. And she went back and woke up, came out of her coma that she had been in, I think she said, for 36 hours. Mm-hmm. And the doctors were really kind of amazed that she came out of her coma, and she told them that she was going to be fine, that she was going to come out of this, she was going to live, and that everything would be okay. And, you know, the doctors were really kind of skeptical, and I think it was within 4 days her tumor started to shrink, and within a couple of weeks there were no signs of tumors in her body at all. And the doctors kept saying, we're looking, we keep looking for the tumors, and we'll find them. We will find evidence of cancer in your body. And, you know, she just kept saying, you're not going to find anything. So it's really, it's kind of an inspirational story. And she was actually discovered by Wayne Dyer. And he had heard about her and contacted Hay House and said, you know, I need to find her. Can you track her down for me? And he actually met up with her and let her know that he wanted her to write her story. And I think Cinda and I have seen Anita speak twice, and I don't think she said it in this particular session, but when we saw her last April with Wayne Dyer in Portland, she had said that that I think she told the story that she had written the book the first time and given it to Wayne, and he read through it and said, Anita, you need to rewrite it again, and you need to write it from the perspective of, you know, first person. This is actually what happened to me, instead of like a dry recounting of the story. Do you remember that, Cinda?
Yeah, she didn't say that this time.
Yeah,
what she did say this time, which was really cool, is how she received the news from Hay House. Remember, it came on an email on her birthday.
Yes.
And she was like, what? Because she had just given up telling her story, because she had chosen, or thought, because when she came back from the other side, she felt that her mission was to share her story. So she shared her stories, and then she decided that she needed to share it in the medical community, and she started to share it within the medical community, and realized that the physicians and the nurses, or whoever it was she was speaking to, just couldn't grasp it. The questions that they asked and the confusion that they felt around it weren't benefiting her. So she decided, well, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. So remember, she stopped sharing. And then the very next day, when she had said no to doing that, she gets this email from Hay House saying that Wayne Dyer has been trying to track her down, and would she consider writing a book for them that they are ready to publish. And she was like, what? And it was on her birthday. So yeah, so that was really cool. And when she had to rewrite the story, it ended up being so much better for her, because she was then able to use that to create what she spoke, you know. And really all she does is sit there and very naturally and beautifully share her experience and her story. Another thing I remember about her that Wayne Dyer said is that he had taken her, I think it was even just her manuscript, I'm not sure it was even published yet, and gave it to his mom, who was in the old folks home.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And so she had read it, the mom had, Mrs. Dyer had read it and was so excited and no longer afraid of death because of it, that then she would run around the facility and share the good news with all these other older men and women. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear.
That's right.
It's beautiful on the other side.
Yes.
So that was, yeah, she's extraordinary.
Yes, she is. She was amazing. I don't think I could ever get tired of hearing her tell her story and talk.
Agreed.
Yeah, yeah. So moving on, the next keynote speaker that we had that morning was Marianne Williamson. And Marianne Williamson she's an author. She's written several books, and she's also a lecturer, and she lectures on what is called A Course in Miracles. And I've mentioned that book in the show before, and A Course in Miracles was written back, I think it was between 1965 and 1971, and it was actually channeled to a woman by an entity who called himself Jesus. And A Course in Miracles is 365 lessons, and the first half of the book has everything to do with retraining your mind, or trying to untrain your mind to think in fear-based terms. And the second half of the book, the second 180 some odd lessons, are all about training your mind to think in love-based terms. And the book is actually broken up into 3 sections. There's the actual book, there's then the student workbook, and then there's the teacher workbook. And Marianne Williamson actually lectures on A Course in Miracles every Monday night from Los Angeles, and I think it's from the Saban Theater, and 7:30 to 9:30, and she takes just one of the lessons every week and talks about it for an hour, and then takes questions from the audience. And so she was the second keynote speaker, and she is just this little tiny woman who is just so full of energy and so full of life, and she talks a mile a minute. And I tell people that, you know, when I first started listening to Marianne Williamson, probably about a year ago, I understood maybe 10% of what she was saying. And I'm to the point now where I can understand about 25% of what she says. I was really excited that during this hour when she spoke on Saturday, I understood everything of what she was saying. It all made sense to me, So she was talking about, since it was Valentine's weekend, she was talking about relationships, and the concept that relationships, every relationship we have is an assignment to us from the universe, and for us to work with and to learn something from those relationships, and the fact that everything happens for a reason. So she was talking about that, and she was talking about relationships as assignments to us, the same way as, you know, when we are conceived and we are growing in the womb, that, you know, cells have their own assignments, and it's all by divine creation and divine purpose that, you know, cells are assigned to the spleen, and certain cells are assigned to the heart, and like I said, it's all by divine creation. So we each have our own job here in the world, and And I just love listening to her lecture on this. And I think she's actually done this same talk. Was this the same talk that she did for Oprah last fall? Do you recall, Cinda? I think Oprah did that weekend where she had all sorts of spiritual speakers in, and she recorded them and then put them up on her website. And I think this was the same one that she did last fall. So I've heard it before.
Well, it was so wonderful. Remember when she walked off the stage and then came down, and we were in the front row of the general seating area.
Yes.
And she walked right in front of us and stood right next to us. And man, she was a serious, dynamic person. You know, you could just feel her energy. It was crazy. I'm sorry, my cat is.
I hope your cat's okay.
I think he's hungry. Shoot. Yeah, she was amazing. Remember what she said about Cupid, about that there was a purpose and a reason for Cupid, and that when you're in a room and like, I'm going to paraphrase here, I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, but you know, there might be that moment in time where all of a sudden you feel this intense attraction to somebody in the room, and you wonder what the heck was that about, and okay. And she's like, you know, in those moments, you've probably been hit with the arrow of Cupid, and it's something to pay attention to. It's something to not ignore. I mean, you can ignore it, and maybe you'll meet that person again 3 years from now or whatever. But in that moment, there is reason, an assignment has just been given.
Yes.
A relationship with that person might be interesting, not necessarily romantic, but worth investigating.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like you said, it's an assignment from the other side.
Well, and because it was Valentine's Day weekend, a lot of the people were talking about love-themed
they were
topics.
Yeah. So anyway, Marianne Williamson, she was fabulous. So moving on. So what happened after that was we went into individual sessions, and they were 90 minutes each, and there were 3 throughout the day that we went to. And so Cindy and I actually went to the same one for the first session, Colette Barron Reed, and she bills herself as an intuition expert, and she actually brings messages from the other side to individuals. And she spent a good portion of the session that day bringing messages forward. And I remember, you know, she said when she first started talking, she said, you know, I'm going to deliver a lot of messages while I'm talking today. And she said, it may seem as if, you know, this message is being delivered to just one particular person, but oftentimes, as is the case, when you gather a large amount of people in a room, those people are in that session for a reason, and the messages that I deliver can easily be applied to several people in the room. So they're not necessarily directed towards one person. They could be towards a lot of people. And the one message that I remember clearly that she was talking about, she actually pointed in our section several times. There were a lot of people in our section where we were sitting who had messages delivered to them from Colette. But the one that was delivered to somebody in our section that I clearly remember. It was, I think, 2 rows in front of us and maybe 3 or 4 people over. And Colette, she pointed to our section and she said, who over in this section collects dachshunds? But she used the different pronunciation. I think she said dachshunds, or anyway, it was a different pronunciation. But it was dachshunds. She says, who over in this section collects dachshunds? And, you know, it turns out it was this one particular woman. And, you know, she said, so there's somebody here who wants to give you a message. You collect dachshunds. And there's also something about snoring or sleep apnea. And she said there's also a daughter involved, a daughter who has, you know, had troubles. And she said, bottom line, the message was that she wanted to let this person know, or the person who was delivering the message, the spirit who was delivering the message, wanted the woman to know that the daughter was going to be okay. And I just found that really, really interesting because my aunt, that message could have applied to her. And I actually gave her that message last night. I went to her house and gave her the message, and she was very, very grateful. But my aunt has had several dachshunds, and I won't give her name here, but she does have sleep apnea. So I knew that it applied because of that and the dachshunds. And she's had a daughter who has had troubles. And so she was just really grateful to get that message.
Yeah, and I had the same thing happen to me about someone that was in the front row who had her husband come through, and he wasn't a very nice man, and how he was apologizing. No, it was her father. It was her father. And how he was apologizing for how he had treated his wife, and was fully aware that his wife had raised beautiful children and that the children shouldn't feel bad about it. But I could relate, not that, I mean, there were so many parts of that story that weren't pertinent to me per se, but people that I knew, that I'm very close to, who that message could have been for. And I just could hold space for the mother and the children that were harmed by this man. And, it was truly a healing moment,
Right.
Truly a healing moment for me to hold space for those that I love who may have been able to relate to that story had they been there.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. But I have seen a lot of mediums, and interestingly enough, I've seen them without ever needing a reading. But I go with people who do want readings, and this woman, Colette, was probably by far the most jaw-dropping, spot-on, beautiful, funny. I mean, remember she called herself a daughter of a pirate?
Yeah.
She had a mouth on her and she drank. Oh, she was so real, so down to earth. Oh, and remember that she lost her dog, so she was grieving.
Her dog had died like 2 days before she gave this talk.
And she realized, and I read her blog that she posted right after she finished the session with us, and she said that she wasn't sure she had it in her to do it.
Right.
And she came and she did it anyway, and she was so glad she did, because it's true. She got to practice what she preached, which was the messages that came through, and the grief in trying to help those who were grieving. She helped her own grief.
Yeah.
And how she again was reminded of how important her gift is to the world. So
exactly.
I was so impressed with her.
She was fabulous. She also she has a Canadian TV show called Messages from Spirit, and I haven't looked it up yet, but it apparently in Canada airs every night at 11 and 11:30, and I think this is the first season. There's 36 episodes, and it was just released. So that's something to look at. I think that would be really fascinating to watch. I don't know if we could find it on Netflix or YouTube, but it's worth looking at. So that was Colette Baron-Reid. Really, really charming. So what was the next session you went to, Cinda?
I think I went to Dr. Mike Dow when he was talking about brain fog and diet, and how the diet can help prevent Alzheimer's and dementia.
Uh-huh. Awesome. And what was it you were telling me afterwards about, was it omega-3?
Yeah, the part for me, which is the most enjoyable of any of these people, is when they give me their story, like what brought them to the point where they are right now sitting on stage talking to me. And when he was like 15 years old, his brother, who might have been younger than him, had a massive stroke. And fortunately, because when he started to share the story, he got real emotional and choked up. And this was a young man, and yet he's also a medical doctor, so he's had to have been to school already.
Yeah.
So in my older age, he probably is not as young as he appears, but like he was 12. Could have been 30. Yeah, so he said that he was watching his dad. His dad was a physician, and his father instantly knew somehow to give his son omega-3s.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the son, who is now grown, although still slightly numb on one side of his body, is able and capable of traveling the world by himself, when prior he was diagnosed as just being bedridden for the rest of his years.
Wow.
And so from that point on, he dedicated his life, Dr. Mike Dowded, to studying what this was and how nutrition could actually change the chemistry of the body
Mm-hmm.
and make it healthy. So, sorry, my cat.
Pretty good.
I don't know what that's about.
So the session I went to while you were talking or seeing Mike Dow, I went to see Nick Ortner, and Nick Ortner is the author of a book called The Tapping Solution. Hi, is that Grim?
Yes.
Hi, Grim.
Maybe if I hold him, he'll be quiet. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe. So anyway, Nick Ortner is the author of a book called The Tapping Solution, which is a mixture of ancient Chinese acupressure with kind of a mix of what he calls modern psychology. And so he was really interesting. He actually brought 3 volunteers onto the stage. And, you know, he asked for volunteers, people who had a pain level of 5 or above. So he brought 3 women onto the stage, and they all had pain levels around 7 or 8. And then he led us through a tapping exercise. And it was a mixture of, we would tap on the eyebrows, then underneath the eyes, and right here underneath the nose and the chin. And then, of course, underneath the arm. And the last place was, on the head. We had to tap on the top of our head. So, and as we were tapping, he was leading us through positive affirmations. And so we did that for 3 or 4 minutes. And then he asked all 3 women, okay, after that tapping session, what is your pain level now? And I think all 3 of them were about at a 4. So they had gone from a 7 and 8 down to a 4 through simple tapping exercises. Then he took us through a much longer tapping exercise. I think it was probably 5 or 6 minutes, and with different affirmations. And after that tapping session, 2 of the women had absolutely no pain at all. And the third was, I think, at a 2 or a 3.
Yeah, that's
not mistaken. Really, really fascinating. And the reason I wanted to take this one was because I think it was back in 2008. I actually had a personal coach for 3 months, and we did weekly phone calls. She was in California, and I was up here in Washington. And we did weekly phone calls, and the purpose of the phone calls was stress reduction. I was in a very stressful job, and things were not going well. And at the end of each phone call, she took me through a tapping exercise, and it was awesome in how it just reduced my stress and allowed me to get on with the rest of my day. So he was just really, really fascinating. So the next session I went to was Dr. Laura Berman, and she talked about relationships, and very knowledgeable, very charming, but I think I finally decided that I was probably in the wrong class. I really enjoyed everything she had to say, and I actually did take tons of notes, but decided that I probably had taken the wrong class. So what was your next one?
Oh, Cheryl Richardson, the life coach that's been on Oprah, and she was extraordinary. Her topic that she was speaking about was how to find extraordinary moments in ordinary days. She's 55 years old, I believe is what she said, and she's been so ambitious her entire life, and recently she's learned to say no. And she has dedicated every morning to just 10 minutes of meditation. And because of that, magic has started to find its way to her, especially through nature, because she is now all of a sudden, like for the first time in her life, present enough to witness them.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, it's just, and her stories were beautiful, but she did some free life coaching sessions for 3 people in the room. And that was extraordinary to see her in action, because she is not only a beautiful woman, but her intuition is so spot on. It was just like she could look at someone and just be, and through her questions and asking, and through her heart, and through her present moment, you know, being present for that person, she was able to figure out really quite quickly what the woman needed to do. And it was beautiful to witness her in action. She was someone who I could be really good friends with. I just really wanted to be her friend. You, right here, 6th row back, 3 seats in, coffee, wine, please. Yeah, so that was beautiful.
Awesome. So those were the 3 sessions for the day, and then we had a keynote speaker in the evening. His name was Brendan Bouchard, and he is a motivational speaker, and he was high energy.
Poor guy, he showed up sick, I think. I think he like had the flu, but he pushed his way through it.
Yeah, I think he said that he had, spent most of the day in his hotel room just trying to get better. But he had really kind of an interesting story, and he grew up in, I think it was Montana.
Butte, Montana.
Yeah, Butte, Montana, and into a very poor family. He actually put a slide up on the screen, and it showed the house he grew up in. And it's just this little tiny house. And hi, Grim.
Sorry. Distraction.
Grim needs to watch. Little tiny house, and in the background, he said that there was rundown apartment buildings, and up on the hill in town was, what did he call it, a Superfund site, one of those sites where it is so toxic that there is no way to clean it up. Yeah. So he was motivated to leave Butte, Montana, and he actually wrote a book called The Motivation Manifesto. And so what he talked about was, his experience in getting out of Butte, Montana, and making something of himself, writing his book, and he actually showed pictures of all the people he had met. The Dalai Lama was the one that impressed me the most.
But he had just recently come from an interview with Oprah, remember?
Yes, just a few days prior. Had spent a couple of days, I think, actually teaching his Motivation Manifesto class, and Oprah was a participant. So, but yeah, he was so super high energy. He told the story of, he actually told the story through pictures of him jumping out of the airplane.
That was so funny. That was so sweet. He's so young.
Yeah. So his friends had talked him into skydiving, and he talked about pulling up to the little airport in the middle of nowhere. I think it was Arizona somewhere, and there was a barn, and I think he said there was a bar. And he just kind of hung back and watched. He wanted to see which one of those buildings the pilot came out of.
Oh, God.
Oh, it was hilarious. And then getting up into the plane, and he was talking about, the plane was flying at a, steady rate, and pretty soon the plane started going like this, and his friends started falling out the back of the plane. And then his partner, the man who he was jumping out of the plane with, it was a tandem jump, and the man said to him, when the plane starts going like this again, it's going to be our turn. And just the fact that he eventually did jump out of the plane with protest, and then his tandem partner, kept hitting him and, kind of indicating to him, okay, it's time to pull the cord. And I think he actually pulled it like at the very last second.
He was such an amazing storyteller. And what I loved about that is that he had no shame. He was totally just, and the pictures that he showed were not complimentary to him in any way whatsoever.
No.
The story that really meant the most a lot to me was when he was, he was in college, and he got in a near fatal car accident.
Right.
And he was, he was overseas, right? Wasn't he in Europe traveling?
I think he was.
And,
down in the Caribbean, wasn't it?
Yeah, in a very, very bumpy road, and they were going way too fast, or very dark, and the corner came too sharply without any warning signs that there was a corner, and they rolled their car. And when he was crashed and the car was rolling and he was bleeding, and he, instead of having his life sort of play off next to him, how you see that your whole life plays in front of you, but he had asked this question. He kind of felt, oh my God, did I live enough? Did I love enough? And did I matter enough? And that's what led him to start writing and to turn his life around and to make sure that he did live, did love, and did matter. And I just thought that was a fascinating part of his journey that began his journey.
Absolutely. I think he was on stage for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that was it for Saturday. So we went from 8:30 in the morning until I think it was 7:30, 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
With we had an hour and a half break for lunch, and we had a half hour between each of the sessions. So we packed a lot into the day. And Cinda, tell everybody about the contest you won.
Oh, so they had this great big poster that had across it the skyline of Seattle, and it said, "I can do it." And then it had a cutout of the form of Louise Hay. And you can go to their Instagram. I'm not on Facebook, but on Instagram at Hay House Inc. You can see pictures of what people posted, but they were encouraging people to kind of get dressed up and take selfies with Louise Hay or in front of the banner. So I put out a crown, I made it crooked, and then I picked up a sticker and put a bow around my neck, and the sticker said, "Kiss a Fool." And I had my arms around Louise Hay, woo, Anyway, I won the selfie contest that day. And for those that don't know me, what I love more than anything else in my spiritual practice is working with angels. And one of the women who has become one of my mentors is Doreen Virtue. And what the latest book of hers that I've purchased is a book called Don't Let Anyone Dull Your Sparkle. And what I won was a beautiful t-shirt that says, "Don't let anyone dull your sparkle," and a deck of angel tarot cards, which are, the little book on the inside is signed by both Doreen and Radley Valentine. And so, I just couldn't believe my luck. I was so, all the gifts that they gave away, that was the one that I couldn't believe I won. It was so perfect.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And so then I posted my picture and my enthusiasm online, and Doreen Virtue commented and said, "Happy, enjoy many blessings and angel love," or angel kisses or something. It was awesome.
Yeah. Pretty amazing. So now we're on to Sunday. And Sunday was almost as long as Saturday. They packed a lot into a day. And so the Sunday morning keynote speaker was Mike Dooley. And he wrote a book. I've got it pulled up over here on my iPad. The Top 10 Things Dead People Want to Tell You. And that was actually the title of the talk he was giving. And he's an older man, completely bald and very charming, very, very charming. And he kind of came out on stage trying to do the dance thing as well, but knowing that he wasn't as energetic as the person the night before. But he gave it his best try. So the top 10 things dead people want to tell you. He sat down to write this book, and I'll just read you a couple of the things that dead people want you to know. So they want you to know that we were ready, you are not. There's no such thing as a devil or hell. We're sorry for any pain we may have caused. Your pets are just as crazy, brilliant, and loving here as they were there. I was glad to know that. Nothing we say can prepare you for the beauty of the moment you arrive.
Yeah, he was spectacular. I remember at the very early stages of my spiritual journey, I would receive messages from the universe through Tech University, and that he would post, and I just thought he wasn't into it. But he says that he's a recovering CPA, and that he really, truly, that everything. I mean, so he doesn't speak to dead people, he doesn't see dead people, but he took the practical approach to answering these questions and trying to just connect the dots that, logically this would make sense because of whatever. And so it was a practical guide to what dead people would say. They could say it. And so he's not coming from the perspective of a medium who's getting this message from actual dead people. And yet, by the time he got deeper into the final, the final part of his list, the more sacred and divine his advice became. And it was really, I just really could almost feel the angels in the room applauding him. And so he might not say he has talents or gifts in that way, but of course he does.
Yeah,
he had to have. And he was extraordinary. I think the idea came, his story was the idea for the book came because once upon a time he wrote a message from the universe, and it was a message that went out to his email list about the 10 things people say to dead, or the 10 things dead people would want to say to us. And so then when Reed Tracy, the president of Hay House, contacted Mike Dooley and said, wow, we really want to work with you. What are some of your ideas to, that we can collaborate with? And Mike said, well, I have this idea, I have that idea, I have this idea, I have that idea. And Reed was like, yeah, all those have been written. And he goes, well, I wrote this interesting letter from the universe about 10 things that dead people could say to us. And Reed says, write that. So he had to take his list and then actually turn it into a book. And he read his book for us. And it was so well written that I actually went out and found the book and downloaded it. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
I'm going to be reading it starting tomorrow probably.
Yeah. Awesome. So that was the keynote on Sunday morning. And then we broke off into individual sessions again. And the first session I went to was my favorite one, hands down, of the entire weekend. And it was Sonia Choquette. And she is just this, again, just this tiny little woman, completely charming. And she was talking about developing your sixth sense, and the fact that your sixth sense, your intuition, and how there are two different types of people in the world. There are, she called them fifth sensory people, who are totally ego driven and listen to their ego, and that's how they operate, and they're all fear based. And then she said there's a whole group of people out there who are sixth sensory people, and they have developed the gift, I guess, of listening to your intuition and leading your life through your intuition instead of through your ego. And so she actually, she did this, she did a couple of exercises. Basically, she said, I want to teach you several skills that will help you to develop your intuition and train you on how to listen to your intuition. And so she actually, she had everybody stand up, and she had written this song, and I don't remember what the name of the song was, but anyway, she wrote this song, and she hired a man to sing the song for her, and it was just this very energetic music, and talking about waking up, finding your love, being happy. But the whole point of the song was, she had us all stand up, and the exercise was developed to kind of make our right brain talk to our left brain, and then eventually have our right brain talking to our heart, which is the intuitive piece. So the song was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And she said, it'll probably be the longest 3 minutes and 40 seconds of your life, but we are going to dance through that entire song. And so basically she said, it's not really dancing, but you kind of do a move that your body is not used to doing, and you do that to the rhythm of the music, and then every few seconds you change that move. And so we did that for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And then once that was done, once our right brain and left brain were talking to each other, and our right brain was actually communicating with our heart, then she said, and now we sing. And the music, I Can See Clearly Now, that song came on by, I don't remember his name, anyway, Cliff somebody. And we sang the entire song, which was so much fun, and kind of reminded me of Wayne Dyer, because he wrote a book called I Can See Clearly Now. So that exercise, like I said, was developed to make your right and left brain talk to each other. And then she said, now we're actually going to add another element to this. And she says, I call this entire thing my Breakfast of Champions. So it's 3 minutes and 40 seconds of this song. And then it was probably an equal 3 or so minutes of singing I Can See Clearly Now. And then the last piece was truly the most amazing piece. She had us sit down, and she led us through a guided meditation. And she had music playing in the background, and it was by an Indian gentleman. And she said she chose the music. It was actually done by a friend of hers, and she chose the music because of the drum beat and how it kind of mimicked the beating of your heart. And the purpose of this was to put us in touch with our higher self, and to draw the energy of spirit into us. And that was probably a 7 or 8 minute meditation. And so her whole premise of this was, if we take this Breakfast of Champions, the singing of the song, and the dance and the song and the meditation, and we do that every day for 30 days, she said, you will definitely, by the end of 30 days, have retrained yourself to think using your intuition instead of using your mind.
Oh, how awesome.
It was fabulous. It was just fabulous. And she had her daughter on stage with her, and her daughter was working the music board, and I don't think her daughter ever said a word. In fact, when the session started, her daughter was sitting up there on stage, and at the little table where Sonia's books were stacked up, and she was working on a little computer. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I wonder who that is. And pretty soon she pushes a button, and music comes on, and it's the song Car Wash. And she stands up, and she's wearing just this cute little mini skirt with this black and white striped top. And she's on stage, and she just starts dancing. And everybody's kind of watching, who is she and what is she doing? We know she's not Sonia Choquette, but she actually was, because her name is Sonia. And it was Sonia's daughter. And then Sonia came out on stage, and she was dancing, and it was just a fun way to start the sessions. So, and I actually went to YouTube, and I found that exact same talk. It was an hour instead of an hour and a half. So in the talk on YouTube, she actually cut out her whole personal story, and she just led us through all of the exercises. And I actually watched it this afternoon. And so I'm going to post the link up on Waking the Spirit website. I thought you, Cinda, might really enjoy watching it, and I know there's a lot
I'm
of
so
people.
glad you found that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll check that out.
Yeah. So what was the session you went to?
I went to go see a woman from Seattle, not Seattle, from Utah, named Teal Swan. She's a mystic and a galactic being, you can tell, and she was just lovely. She's beautiful, she's gorgeous. She pulled 2 people up on stage, and because it was Valentine's Day, she, you know, help them with their love issues. But oh my gosh, yeah. So I guess the reason why I chose this class is because she said that she wasn't going to give the class a theme or a title until she took a reading of the class to see what the majority people in that particular class needed. And so it was really interesting to just sit there, and while she scanned the room, she had all of us think not of our past, not of our future, but of our current situation. And the thing she came up with was self-worth. And then she said, so we're going to talk about this topic about self-worth, but I'm going to ask you who has questions. I want you all to right now think about the question that you want to ask that has to do with self-worth. And that's going to generate an energy in the room. And that energy is going to flow underneath each of your seats. And the one, and all like, questions will find each other and generate the same amount of energy, and then it will find a spokesperson for it. And I'll be able to tell which one of you that is, because the top of your head will light up like a tiki torch. That's who I will call on. And so it was really interesting. So she called on a woman and she called on a man, and the man was so taken by her beauty, he was having trouble concentrating. It was absolutely charming, hysterical. Oh, but one of the exercises she had us do, which was so profound and meaningful, is before she took the question, she had us partner up with somebody. So I partnered up with the young woman that was sitting to my left, and we had to look at our partner. For 5 minutes, she timed us as the first person looked at their partner and pretended that they were their beloved, and told them how much they loved them. And so you're looking at, which might be a stranger. In my case, it was a stranger. And if it wasn't your stranger, if it was a good friend or actually your beloved, you had to tell them why they were your beloved, or you had to make it up. And so I started with talking about the woman's hair and how her complexion was so sweet and how she seemed so nice, and how our little small talk that we had made, I could tell she was a very thoughtful person. So then I stopped and I thought, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, what this assignment was really supposed to be about. I ended up telling this woman everything that I ever needed to hear from my beloved. And while I was doing it, she started to cry and cry and cry. And my voice was cracking, and it was so powerful. It was so powerful to tell her everything. It wasn't like I became psychic and told her what I felt she needed to hear. I told her what she needed to hear. And from my real beloved. But it ended up being exactly what she needed to hear, and it was overwhelming. And then she was much younger than I was, and she didn't have the confidence to do it like I did it for her, but she was very thoughtful and very kind. But it changed the energy in the room. And Teal made us sit quietly and feel how that energy had shifted from one of desperateness to actual peace and feeling loved. And then she answered these questions, and it was beautiful. She was dynamic. Another thing that was really interesting is a lot of people ran up and took their crystals or their pocket stones or their amulets off their neck and put it on the table so she could bless it. Mm-hmm. You know, and she has a big following. It was pretty mystical and magical, and I was fascinated to be part of that audience.
Yeah, and I know she's got a lot of videos up on YouTube.
She has a lot of videos up on YouTube, and she's a very, very different sort of thinker. Yeah. And so either you really, really like her, or she makes you incredibly uncomfortable. And but she doesn't apologize for any of it. It's what she knows is the truth as she knows it, and shares it as she does. And I was very impressed.
Yeah. Awesome. So the second session, I went to see Kyle Gray, who he kind of bills himself as the angel whisperer. And he's this, I mean, if I were to guess on his age, because I'm really bad at guessing people's ages, I would guess him to be late 30s, maybe. He's from Scotland, so he's got the Scottish accent, and I could have sat there and just listened to him talk the entire time. But he was really charming. He told the story of he started receiving visitations from angels, I think when he was 4 years old. The first angel visitation he got was the night his grandmother died. And it was actually the angels and his grandmother visited him. And you know, so it was just, talking to the angels was just commonplace for him. And he told the story of, you know, he always went to Sunday school. And so when he was about 15, he was desperate to figure out, you know, what am I going to do with my life? What is my life's purpose? Just like a lot of people do. And he was so funny because he told the story of, then I saw Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And he said, I figured out what my life's purpose was. Now, I've never seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so I don't know anything about that show, but I got the impression that, you know, it probably had to do with mystical forces and the like. So anyway, he became obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And so one day the Sunday school said to him, it's either God or it's Buffy.
Oh, that's adorable.
He chose Buffy.
Just Buffy. Oh my God.
He was so cute when he was telling that story. And but he went on to tell, you know, probably a couple of more serious stories about, I think one of the first times when he actually was doing readings, he was doing angel readings. He was at a family picnic, and I can't remember if it was his mom or dad with him, but they were at a picnic table, and he walked up to this man sitting at the picnic table. I think it must have been a relative because it was a family picnic, and he looked at the man, and he actually, Kyle saw this huge angel with big angel wings standing right behind the man. And he looked the man in the eye and he said, there is an angel standing right behind you. And the man said, no, there's not. And he kind of turned around and looked and he said, there's no angel behind me. And Kyle said, there's an angel standing behind you. And then he went on to do the reading, which I don't think he really told us the details of it. But his mom encouraged him. I think his mom realized that he had this gift, and she encouraged him to, you know, develop that gift. And so he did, and he's turned it into quite the lovely profession. And he travels the world doing angel readings and visiting conferences, and he was just very, very charming. And he's written several books. I've got one of them here somewhere, which I'm about halfway through. And but very charming man. So what was the session you saw?
So I went to go see Mastin Kipp.
Ah, that's right.
And this is his book. It's called Daily Love. And I actually, when I found out he was coming to Seattle, I knew I wanted to see him. And it was one of the reasons why I was really interested in going to this conference. And the bonus was, and I didn't, to be honest, I didn't really know a lot about him, but for some reason I just knew that I really needed to sit, you know, in on his session. And then I picked up his book there in the bookstore and read the back of it and read the front of it, and so much of his vocabulary there that he uses about overcoming his addictions and his darkness, and then healing himself, and then becoming this motivational speaker and writer is very, very similar to my own process of healing from my trauma that I'm writing about. I mean, it was spectacular. The funny thing that he shares, though, is that this book, Daily Love, is written about, it's his personal story, but it's also named after his blog that went viral just a few years ago when Kim Kardashian got a hold of it and shared something that he had posted, and then it went viral, and then he became nationally, internationally known, and then of course ends up on Oprah and doing all that. And he's young and he's funny and he's motivational and he's real. And I got to meet him, and there was a picture up on my Instagram page under Cinda SL of he and I together, and he signed his book, Cinda, Keep Your Wise Heart Open, Maston. That was my highlight. I won Doreen Virtue's t-shirt and cards, and I got Maston Kip, got a picture with Maston Kip in my, yeah, so that was beautiful and inspirational. And and he was saying that daily love was inspired out of anger, and his entire topic was about don't be afraid of your negative feelings. They're there for a reason. You know, so much of our new age thought is to push them away or feel bad that we're feeling them and pretend that we don't feel them, which actually in a way gives them more power, because if we don't pay attention to them or don't listen to them or honor them, they'll actually just fester in our body and cause our illness. And that's what was happening to him. And then he was covering up his illness with addictions. But he decided, when he decided to listen to his emotions, his negative emotions, and one was anger after a really hostile breakup, and he was so freaking angry, and he, you know, thought, I'll show you, to his ex-girlfriend, I'm going to create a daily love site. I'm going to show you, you bitch, and I'm going to show people how, you know, filled with love I am, and I'm going to tell everybody how, you know, a daily dose of love. And he did it all out of anger from a breakup. So I just thought that was hysterical. So anyway, so that was really inspirational and fun. His theme is purpose over pills. I don't have a problem with pills, but I love pills. Purpose over pills.
Nice.
And that probably, if ever you need drugs, alcohol, whatever addiction you might be drawn to, it's probably because you're lacking in purpose. And if you can find your purpose, you will no longer need that addiction. And at least that was true for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So, the last breakout session of the day, I went to see Radley Valentine, and you and I were in the car on the way home later that night, and I was telling you about the session with Radley Valentine, and I was talking to you about, I was just a little bit disappointed with the session, but, and I have to say that I wasn't being fair to Radley Valentine, and I want to publicly apologize to Radley Valentine for my lack of being fair.
But he didn't know you were being fair until now.
He didn't know, no, but I knew, and you knew, and I felt like I had to apologize for that. And the reason I wasn't being fair is because I had been to 2 sessions that day that just so energized me and so motivated me, and they were just such wonderful speakers that I kind of wanted a third one like that. I wanted to go in and have this fabulous meditation, and I wanted to be energized, and you know, I just wanted some inspiration. And Bradley is, you know, he's an angel card reader. He's a certified angel card reader, and he does a lot of classes with Doreen Virtue, and they've developed a lot of tarot card decks and oracle decks, and Bradley Valentine is just the most charming person ever. He's got this wonderful personality. He is a snappy dresser, and he's funny. And so, you know, I just want to say that, you know, he stood there on the stage and he delivered his message. He talked about the angels, and he talked about various angels and who they were and what their purpose was. And then he did, I'd say maybe a half a dozen angel card readings. And so I was comparing him to the other speakers, and they are so completely different, none better than any of the others. Bradley was just charming, just very charming, and he's very talented. with his angel card readings and did some really fascinating ones, and then ended up giving all the decks away to the people he gave readings to. And he had a few left over and then gave them out to various audience members. There was a young boy sitting behind me. He looked to be about 12 years old, and he got one of the decks. And I thought, yay, the young boy got the deck. So anyway, I'm sorry, Radley, that I misjudged you, and it was wrong. But you were very charming. So who did you see in your last session?
Yeah, so I went to go see Barbara DeAngelis, and oh my gosh, I didn't know what to expect. I just felt an intuitive draw to go see her. And she is a woman who was probably one of the earlier Hay House authors with Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay, and the four of them used to travel around the country trying to grow Hay House's business and promote their books and spirituality. And you know, she's been on big shows. She's been a mystic all her life, and she was telling us, this group, that it's no mistake that we're spiritually awake when we are, because we are called into action. And she gave us a name, which I can't remember what it was, but she said, you might think that your life sucks, or you might think that the hard things you've been going through, don't I deserve a break already? But she said, let me tell you, you've each signed up for it. You raised your hand and you said, I want to be awake, and I want to get through this crap so I can hurry up and get on to my mission. And my mission is to help others awaken and be there when they do. And you can't do that until you clear all your stuff. And so, you know, your stuff is part of your awakening, and don't be afraid of it. It's there to show you. It's there for purpose. And she was so forceful and I mean, you know, she wasn't motivational like all these people are. Even Maston, who I saw before, was rah, 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 rah. And she just stood there in one spot, and I swear to God, all she did was look right at me. And she just demanded out of us the you know, what is required, why we're here, what our calling is, what we're supposed to be doing. And she goes, and every single one of you know, you know. And she said, and if you don't know, then you know, that's okay. Get quiet. It'll reveal itself to you. But I mean, I just sat there in awe. The woman sitting in front of me was a little bit shorter than I was, so I just could have perfect vision of her up on the stage. And I swear, like I said, she spoke to me. All I sat there on the edge of my seat, nodding my head, going, oh my God, I know what you mean. You're speaking to me. I know, I get this. So I had printed off this thing. I'm just going to show your audience really quickly, but I printed this off about my book. It's called I Know Now, and a little synopsis of the book in front, and then the first 3 prefaces for each of my chapters, and then a little bio about me and contact information on the back. I had printed this off to give to Maston because I just knew that I had to give it to someone, and I was really called to take this or to create this before I left. And but I didn't know why. But then the opportunity to give it to Maston never presented itself. It never presented itself, and I wasn't going to be that sort of person that, you know. And all of a sudden, I knew it's not Maston that needs this. It's Barbara.
Yeah.
She needs to know that everything she said is exactly where I am in my own spiritual journey and what I'm showing up to do in my life. And so I went to her assistant. Handed it to her assistant graciously accepted it. And, you know, it's not for anything other than to say, Barbara, your message matters. I'm doing exactly what you are saying that we are supposed to be stepping up and doing. And here is my version of that. Here is what it looks like, just so she knows that there are people who are listening, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was, wow, I wasn't expecting that. That was pretty cool.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And then we segued from that into our last keynote speaker on Sunday night, and it was Joe Dispenza. And it was really interesting because when he first came out on stage, he's a scientist, basically a scientist. And he was talking about basically rewiring your brain. And he put the first slide up on the board, and I thought, he is going to lose me. He's going to lose me. And I remember telling you on the way home, I said, we didn't come up with a signal for each other that, we're ready to go, that, somebody, just isn't doing it for us, and we're ready to go. And I just didn't think we would need a signal like that at this conference. And it turns out we didn't, because he started talking about the fact that the neural pathways in your brain can actually be rerouted and rewired simply by using your thought. And by the time he was finished with his talk, he was able to kind of reweave that entire story and bring a spiritual base to it, which was really fascinating. It's not often that you see a scientist who has such a spiritual base to him.
Yeah, he was something really special. I think of all the people that I saw that I talked to with my husband about was him.
Yeah.
Because what he has learned through his research of rewiring the brain, and research has always proven that negative thoughts lead to stress, and science knows how stress can affect the body. That's a given. His studies is, well, what if we do the opposite? So what about if we create thoughts that are not stressful, but instead are very positive and helpful, and we change the dynamics of the stress? Can we actually heal ourselves and or prevent illnesses?
Right.
And if we do that, what does that look like? Can it be reversed? And his studies and his videos have proven that it can.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not just theory, it's actually practical. Our emotions generate in our body and can either be negative or positive. And and so I was just like, oh my God, because his thing needs to be shared with the world, because every single person on the planet, no matter their belief, no matter their religion, no matter their spiritual practice, whether they have one or not, would understand what he was saying.
Exactly.
And, and it was amazing. So that is something that I would like to find on YouTube and share all over the place, because that was like, I mean, it was so overwhelmingly important. I just can't even it's just the need for what he was saying is so huge, and it's so important, and it's so life-changing, and it would change every single person on the planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It kind of reminds me of, this just popped into my head. It reminds me of the time that I spent in the oxygen chamber a little over a year ago, when I was trying to heal my body from something I was going through. And the hyperbaric oxygen chambers, actually, when you spend enough time in them, they say between 20 and 30 sessions, it's basically the pressure is driving the oxygen deep into your body, and it is able to grow blood vessels in areas that are diseased and need the blood, which then carries the oxygen and actually can heal you. So I think it's amazing that there are people out there like Joe who are doing this research and finding out ways that we actually can heal ourselves without using drugs or medicine.
Right. And he's based in Seattle, and he still sees clients.
Yeah.
You imagine? Oh my God.
Yeah. So really interesting. So overall, the conference was amazing, just amazing. And it was 2.5 days packed with information. And, I kind of came home and my mind was spinning. But, and I sat down yesterday and created my little whole stack of 3x5 cards. And I did one card for each session. And I tried to write down the one or two main points that I learned from that speaker. And because I just don't want to lose that information. I don't want to lose it. So what I'll be doing is on my website, wakingthespirit.net, I'll be posting all the links of all the speakers that we saw. And so anybody can go out there and kind of take a look at these people and what they're all about.
Well, that's a really good idea. A really good idea. You know, these people and the gifts that they give to the world, it's extraordinary.
Yeah, it is.
I'm so glad I went.
So anyway, thank you, Cinda, for being on the show and talking to me and all my listeners about all your experiences for the weekend, and I really, really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure.
All right, so we are at the end of our time, so I will say goodbye to everybody. Goodbye, Cinda. Thank you.
Thank you. Love you, Mary.
Love you too. Bye.